Good morning, this is Colin here. Today we're going to change the lower control arm on a 2007 Saturn Aura XE. This procedure video will be relevant for Chevy Malibus and Pontiac G6s for model years ranging from 04 to 2012. Let's get to it. Okay, to do this job you're going to need a few things. You'll need a floor jack. You'll see me use two in this video. You don't actually need two, one is fine, but you definitely need to use your jack stands properly if you're only using one. You'll need jack stands, of course. You'll need your new parts. In this case, I was intending to do just the control arm, the lower control arm, but I ended up doing the transaxle mount at the same time. So if you're doing the same, you'll need your replacement control arm and a replacement transaxle mount. You'll need a breaker bar. You'll need two torque wrenches. A low range one, we'll be using 37 foot-pounds on that one, and then a high range one, one for the lug nuts, which would be 100 foot-pounds if you have steel rims. You need a ratchet. You need some socket ends, 15, 17, 18, and 19. They don't have to be deep sockets like this. I just prefer to use them. I use the universal joint to get around a sticky spot. Two extensions, short one and a 8-inch one, I think it is. An adapter. This is 3/8 to a half, mostly for that breaker bar. You're going to need some backup wrenches, a 16 and an 18, and you will need a crowbar. Let's get started. First thing we're going to do is remove the wheel covers and loosen up the lug nuts. Okay, now we're going to take our hydraulic floor jack here and jack up the left side of the car. Also, before you do this, make sure you get your parking brake on and put a wheel chock under the back wheel. Okay, now we're going to take the wheel the rest of the way off and get it out of the way. Okay, so the first thing we got to do is get the transaxle mount, that's this guy, out of the way. The reason you got to get out of the way is because the front bolt here, I think he calls it the pinch bolt, has to come out this side, and actually you can see a cutout in the frame for it, but this is all in the way, so this has got to come out first. You got a bolt under here, a bolt under here, these two, and then these three. These three here and the two underneath are 15 millimeter, and then these guys here are larger, they're 17 millimeter. Gotta get a universal joint for this last one here because the plastics are in the way and I don't really care to remove them. In hindsight, you should probably do this one first. It'll make your life easier. Alright, now I got some room to maneuver in here. Well, folks, you know what they say, no battle plan survives first contact with the enemy. As you can see from the transaxle mount, the bolt on the left-hand side, or on the right-hand side here, has been snapped off. Most likely at some point someone was doing a little bit of off-road driving and hit a rock or something, because that bolt is snapped off and quite bent. In fact, I'm kind of surprised it's stayed on there as long as it did. So we're going to take a brief intermission here and go get another replacement transaxle mount ordered here while we're pulling the rest of the vehicle apart. Okay, the next thing you're going to have to do is mark the position of the current control arm that you're going to replace. And the reason you want to do this, when you put the new one in, you want to position it in the same normal position as the old one. So I took a Sharpie here, and just make the camera so you can see. I put a little Sharpie mark here and here on the castings to show where those two line up, because the new part also has the same casting mark, and we'll be able to line those two up and get the new one exactly where the old one was. Okay, next we're going to do the pinch bolt that's holding the control arm in. That's that guy right there. And we're going to take that out. That's also a 15 millimeter. Okay, you need a backup wrench to get this guy out. Backup wrench is a 16 millimeter. Okay, now we're going to remove the rest of the mounting bolts in the control arm. This front one is a 18 millimeter and it's really on there, so we're going to get the breaker bar in to get this one loose. Okay, the back two mounts are underneath this knuckle here, and they are also 18 millimeter, and I'm going to use the breaker bar on them as well because they're probably going to be similarly tight, difficult to break free. Looks like I'm spinning up top there. I need a backup wrench. Okay, the last thing holding this control arm in should be this is this pinch bolt here and the end there. So we've already loosened the pinch bolts. We're gonna get the pry bar in here to pry the control arm out of the pinch bolt. Make sure you don't damage the boot here on the ball joint end when you're pulling it out. Although if you're replacing that, it probably doesn't matter. Okay, with our old control arm out, it's time to put the new one in. Okay, well that was an absolute chore. Rather than bore you with a half-an-hour long video of me swearing, cursing, and hitting these with a hammer, I figured I'd just tell you what I did to get the new control arm in. So when you're first, try to maneuver it in, and the first thing you want to get in is this back portion here. You're gonna have to kind of lever it against this piece of suspension and kind of lever it up and in. At the same time, you'll get that front part more or less in at the same time. What you're going to want to do is throw 1 or 2 bolts in this back corner here. You don't want to tighten them up yet, but you want to get them in there so this can't fall out. Once you've got that in, leave the bolt out of there. In fact, you're probably going to pull that down.
and get the ball joint here on the bottom lined up with where it needs to go. Then you can take your jack, and again, this is why you need the jack stand. I was lazy, I used the second jack because I happen to have one at the moment. But yeah, if you've got the car on jack stands, take your first jack out and put it underneath here, and use it to push up on the bottom of the control arm. And then what'll happen is, you gotta line up the pin with the pinch on the bottom of the suspension here. And what you're gonna do is it won't want to go in. It'll start, but it won't go in. And what you'll have to do is you'll jack up and compress the shock absorber here, and you'll probably lift it like somewhere between 3 and 6 inches. And as you're lifting it, you shake the brake rotor here, swivel it back and forth, and it'll eventually at a certain point slide home. At which point you take the jack off and then start putting your bolts in. So that's what I'm going to do now. I've got the control arm in. We're going to go get the bolts in and tighten everything up. Okay, I'm going to torque the pinch bolt now. These have quite the interesting torque schedule. The directions say to torque to 37 foot-pounds, which is pretty standard. I've got a torque wrench set to 37, which we'll do first. Then it says to loosen by 3/4 of a turn. That's a quarter, that's a half, and that's 3/4. Then they say to retighten it to 37 foot-pounds plus an additional 60 degrees. My guess is what they're trying to do is, because some of these parts are aluminum, is they're actually forming them up a little bit to the new pieces. So let's go back to 37 and then give it a 60-degree turn. Okay, well, we're gonna call that good. For the pinch bolt at least. Okay, next I'm gonna do this front bolt here. And as you may recall from the beginning of the video, we left a shock remark right here to line up with the cast mark. And it turns out that it does, in fact. Let's see, give you a better picture there. Line up perfectly with the casting mark, just the way it is right now. My guess is that's because of me jacking this up to get the pinch bolt in, probably kept us at the right height. So we're good to tighten that one up now. Okay, for both the front and rear fasteners, the torque is similar. It's 37 foot-pounds initially, and then they say to tighten it in an additional 90 degrees. So that's what we're gonna do. Okay, we're going to put the 37 foot-pound torques on these guys now. Okay, that is the control arm part of the job done. Now let's get that transmission mount back in. Okay, well, I've got my new transaxle mount here, so I'm going to pull the bracket off this guy and transfer him to the new one. Make sure you get that on the right way. Looks like the transaxle mounts are also 37 foot-pounds, which is awfully convenient. So okay, as you no doubt noticed when I took the transaxle mount off, it settled a bit. So we're going to have to jack up the transaxle a bit so the bolt holes line up and we can bolt everything back in place. And to answer the obvious question, or the unobvious question of where to jack on the engine, you don't want to jack on the oil pan or the pan, because that will probably cause it to leak. It looks like the best place to jack is going to be this bracket here, because it's sitting on some castings and it's kind of in between the various pans. So that's where I'm going to set my jack up, and I'm going to put a nice soft piece of wood there to distribute the load a bit. Okay, we got the jack set up under the engine and transmission, and as I said before, you can simply use the same jack that you use to lift the car and use the jack, just the jack stands to lift the car up. But let's go ahead and get this engine lifted up a little bit and see if we can get these bolts to line up. Okay, now we're going to get the two nuts on the bottom here as well. Alright, and last part for this transaxle mount is Torx. 37 foot-pounds all around. Okay, now we'll take this jack down so that we're no longer putting any weight on the engine there. Okay, lastly, it's wheels and tires go back on. Okay, now we're going to get it off the jack stand so we can torque these lug nuts down. Okay, lastly we put tighten the lug nuts back up to 100 foot-pounds. Now this is for steel rims. We've got alloy rims that may be different, but I think all of them have steel for this model. Alright, that's all there is to it. Thanks for watching.